Aloha no ke anu e lue, a he wehi ano kauka. He hoa ka ua no ala kai, hulu pei ka nahele. E maliu mai, I ka leo kupuna, ma ke ala o ke onga. E huaka I kilohana, e kulia I ka nuu.
Overlooking the Pacific Ocean, the Shangri-La Museum of Islamic Art, Culture, and Design is a place where art, ideas, and people connect. Here we meet Jack Kittinger, a conservation leader whose life's work is shaped, sustained, and renewed by the sea.
I was really lucky to grow up in an island community in the Barrier Islands of North Carolina, known as the Outer Banks. And when you're a kid, you don't really know how, what you have is so rare and special, but when you move away, you understand that much more deeply. And the little beach town that I'm from, Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina, we grew up boating, fishing, surfing, diving, and had a real aquatic upbringing, which was super fun as a kid. And it really informed, why I do what I do now, because I was in and around the environment all the time as a young person.
At what point did you realize that you wanted to go into the environmental work?
I learned how to drive a boat before I learned how to drive a car, so in some sense I knew that I wanted to do something in the environment and something in ocean work originally. But when I was young, I didn't really have a conception of what that could be. I didn't have a pathway to follow. It was kind of like an exploration, like an adventure. How do you arrive into the conservation sector? And it's taken a lot of twists and turns, but I think growing up in and around and very connected to nature, that was the foundation for it all and how it all started.
For Jack, it started with education, a degree in biology from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, then a master's in marine and environmental studies from UC San Diego, and a PhD in geography and marine policy from UH Manoa. You initially started out pursuing academia. What changed?
And I got a faculty interview at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver. And I was super excited about this interview because it's a very prestigious university, and the program that was interviewing for me is well known globally. And in the interview process, the sole female member of the faculty asked me this question. She said, "Let's imagine, Jack, that we hire you here on the faculty and you've had this great career and you've done all these amazing things, and we throw you a retirement party. What did you do?" And I gave her this answer that was sort of what I thought she wanted to hear, right? And she slammed her hand down on the table and she said, "That's not good enough. I know you, and that's not actually what you care about. What are we actually celebrating if you've worked here for decades?" And I said, if something is different out in the ocean because of something that I did, that would be worth celebrating. And she just leaned back and said, "That's more like it." And that interaction stuck with me, because what she essentially was asking me is, what matters to you in your life? When all of this is said and done, and you're at the end of your life, what impact did you have? And that led me into the field of being a conservation practitioner.
Since that interaction in 2011, Jack has worked with Conservation International, a global nonprofit protecting nature in more than 100 countries. In Hawaii, the organization helped lead one of the hardest-fought environmental victories in recent memory, the passage of the landmark Visitor Green Fee. The first-of-its-kind legislation in the U.S. is expected to generate $100 million every year to protect Hawaii's environment.
That effort really stemmed out of work that we've done elsewhere to support that. And one of the most iconic versions of this is in the beautiful island nation of Palau. And Palau instituted a visitor green fee more than 10 years ago. It's been an immensely successful effort. And we looked at that and other places like Aotearoa in the Galapagos and said, maybe we could do something like that here. And we've been on a long journey to get a visitor green fee passed, and we got it passed this last legislative session, which was incredible.
That must have been quite a victory for you.
It felt like an incredible, one of the most amazing moments of my professional career. And to be clear, I'm just one out of dozens, if not hundreds of people that have helped make this happen. At the beginning of this effort, it felt completely like a moonshot, like this is some wild idea. Sure, these other folks do it in other places, but we can't do that here because of, you name it, any number of reasons. But we systematically sort of attacked those reasons why we couldn't do it, and over time we were able to make it a reality. And a big and very sad part of that story is Lahaina, because there's a clear climate signal in that huge tragedy that unfolded. And I think when the dust settled in the immediate aftermath, we looked at that collectively as a community and said, how do we prevent something like that from ever happening again? And one of the key solutions to that is improving the resource state of our environment, because there is nothing better as an insurance policy against wildfire than an intact native ecosystem, right? And we need to restore ecosystems across the board, not just for wildfire, but for floods, for droughts, for big storms, for any number of vulnerabilities that the climate crisis will make more severe, more damaging, and more frequent. And the science on that is super clear. So we have got to get ready, and the green fee is going to help us get there.
When that green fee passed and having a hand in that, did you feel like that was the moment that you had talked about in that interview, making a difference in the ocean? I mean, it sounds like there's a realization of that goal.
Yeah, I think for all of us involved in that, there was a watershed moment in the ledge where it came out of the committee vote, and we all looked around and we're like, oh my God, it's actually gonna happen. Like, we've been at this for 8-9 years, and here we are, and it's about to happen. And of course, it was a beautiful moment when Governor Green signed that bill into law, and we took a quick victory lap and then went right back to work to make sure that its implementation is as successful as it can be.
Coming up, Jack takes us to a place where Mauka and Makai meet, and the health of Hawaii's ecosystem is revealed in the waters of a single spring.
And this is the Kawaikui spring. It's fresh water that flows down all the way from the mountains.
At Kawaikui Beach Park, the mountains meet the ocean in an unexpected way, with icy fresh water rising from the sand.
It's really flowing right here.
Yeah, it sure is. It sure is.
Oh, and
This cold, water from the ko'olaus, and you can really feel it.
Jack Kittinger is deeply tied to this shoreline. It's where he taught his sons to surf, where he comes to reconnect with nature, and where these subtle streams show what's possible when Hawaii's environment is cared for.
So what does it tell you when the water is flowing like this?
Well, the water flow from this spring is indicative of the connection between Mauka to Makai, ridge to reef. And this water all comes from the mountains and that Mauka ecosystem that's up there. So as long as the water is flowing, we're still okay, because it means that there's still some forest intact. But it's almost certainly true that this spring was more vigorous and strong back when native ecosystems were more intact. So we have some work to do to restore the uplands and those ecosystems, but as long as the spring is still running, we're still okay. There's still, a connection to be maintained. And it also feeds the health of the ocean. This, the name of Kawaikui means the mixing or uniting of waters. So anywhere that fresh water mixes with ocean water is usually a pretty productive area for fish and other kinds of sea life. And as long as this spring still flows into the ocean, we still have that mixing and the health that it creates.
Hawaii's natural beauty is abundant. It's also very fragile.
It's really easy to lose this ecosystem. We sort of take it for granted that this will always be here, that it'll always be in its current form. And that's just not the case. It's faces all sorts of threats from our actions, including now climate change, which is a huge existential threat. And these ecosystems are resilient, but they can only take so much. And we have to know that, and we have to, put an equal amount of energy into stewarding these places because we can lose them.
Looking out at the water, Jack finds both perspective and purpose.
The work that we do in conservation is very difficult, and overall, all the indicators are still going the wrong way. We are still much better at destroying nature than reviving and restoring it. But that is work worth doing. And so many people here in Hawaii and across the world are engaged in that struggle and doing their best to save their little place and their spot. And we all have to do that, and our kids need to be part of that if we're gonna have any chance of turning the tide.
The lessons of conservation apply to leadership. Both demand resilience and a willingness to persevere.
Sometimes being a leader is just being persistent. It's not more complicated than that. I remember for the green fee in particular, we had a legislative session where the bill passed through both houses and it didn't get scheduled for a conference bill. And the whole team, myself included, were pretty down about that. I mean, some people were outright demoralized. And you're gonna get a lot of failure before you get success in any endeavor. And you have got, at some point, to mourn the failure, learn from it, pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and get your energies back around you and push again. And that literally is the story of the green fee. We were a failure. Everyone's talking about the big win. You gotta remember, we failed for 8 years before we succeeded in getting this through. So you have to learn from those. And you have to not let yourself succumb to the demoralization that happens when you fail to succeed.
And where do you find that inner strength? Where does that come from?
Well, look, I work in conservation. Like, we might win a battle or two, but we are losing the war. I mean, if you look at any of the data on climate or biodiversity loss, which are the two twin crises that I believe will define our age, it certainly will define my children's lives in fundamental ways that it didn't define mine. Like, their lives will be fundamentally different. But we are losing that battle at the global scale. And not losing it we're losing it badly. And we're trying to bend that arc back. So you have to take heart in the small victories and in the small wins, no matter how little they may be, because that is how you build and build towards bigger success.
When the problems that you're describing are of the nature that they are so vast and they can feel so overwhelming.
Yeah.
How do you not get overwhelmed by that and just say, you know what, forget it? I know that there are people who, avoid stories about climate change because they just are so demoralizing. You can get really depressed. And I've talked to climate scientists who say that there is actual depression among climate researchers because of these issues. How do you avoid that? How do you not get overwhelmed by the problem itself?
Well, I mean, it's okay to be overwhelmed by the problem. That's okay. It happens all across the sector. I see people on my team grapple with this all the time, right? But I'm constantly reminding them of the adage that, if everyone sweeps their front porch, the whole world will be clean. So sweep your front porch, right? You handle the part of this problem that you're responsible for. And if you are successful at that, then that makes the next person next to you's jobs easier. And we're all engaged in this. We're not gonna solve it overnight. It's a problem that took over a century to form, like literally since the Industrial Revolution, this has become an issue. And we have just a couple of generations to solve it. I mean, maybe even shorter than that, but any progress is good progress. We cannot get trapped in what Al Gore talked about famously in An Inconvenient Truth, in this like, well, this is just too big, we might as well just go home and give up, right? That is just not an option. Right? So part of my job is to keep people focused on what they can achieve and their part of this overall struggle.
Coming up, Jack reflects on what it means to take up space in Hawaii and why his leadership is grounded in giving back. Jack Kittinger has lived in Hawaii longer than anywhere else in his life. His sons were born here. This place fuels his professional purpose. Yet he says these islands are not his to claim.
I've always felt a special connection here. The value system that our community has here in Hawaii is very similar to the value system in the place where I grew up. That said, I'm not sure I'll ever be completely at home here. I'm not from here. I have had so many conversations with friends, including Native Hawaiian scholars who I deeply respect, about what it means to be someone like me who lives here. And where I've arrived is that if you're going to take up space on indigenous lands, take it up well. Give back, do your part. If you do that, then that is the right way to be in a place like this. So in other words, I'm not sure I should be comfortable. I should always be pushing to give back to this community precisely because I'm not from here. In other words, take up that space well.
Tell me about your leadership style and how it's changed over time. Has it changed over time? Are you the same leader you were when you first came to Hawaii?
I'd be surprised if anyone who's in a leadership role doesn't change through time. For one, the outside environment is changing so much that we have to adapt. But I think coming from a Western upbringing, when you think of leadership where I grew up, it's often leading from the front, and you see people that are, out in front of a crowd giving speeches, and you think as a kid that's what leadership is. But so much of leadership here in community is people that lead so effectively from the back of the room, quietly, with gravity, with wisdom, and of course with deep integrity and deep knowledge to go with it. And that has been something that, if you go to any community meeting anywhere in Hawaii, you see that, right? And it is a much different style of leadership than is prevalent in the West, and something that I've learned a lot from over the years from so many people across our community.
You talked about your kids growing up in a different environment and a different world than the one that you grew up in. How much of what you do is motivated by being a dad?
Oh, I think a lot. I read something when they were young that really stayed with me, and that was that if you look at a kid in elementary school now, that something like 2 out of every 5 jobs that those kids will hold don't exist yet. So think about that. How do you prepare your child for a very different future, including one full of innovation and all sorts of advancements in technology and environment and any number of sectors, but also for a world that will be harder, drier, more conflict, and quite frankly, where vulnerabilities will go up. And I think part of my job as a parent is to help prepare them for that.
And how do you do that? I mean, you're more aware than the typical person about what those scenarios could look like.
Yeah.
And given all that knowledge, what are you doing that maybe the rest of us aren't?
Well, I'm not sure that I'm doing anything that the rest of people aren't, or that I'm doing it better for that matter. But I really do try to focus with them on their value set, and to ensure that in their upbringing that is solid and firm, because no matter what they end up doing or what career or what kind of family they have, that will be, fundamental to who they are. And then I think, like every parent, you're just trying to open all the doors and see which ones they step through. I mean, the joke in our household is that they might be the best baseball players ever. I wouldn't know because I never signed them up for baseball, so maybe that was a failing on my part. But, on the flip side of that, the opportunities that kids here have in Hawaii are, they're numerous, right? There's so many incredible things to get involved with, and you just try to enable that, right?
We talked about this great victory with the green fee, and I'm curious now, what's the next big challenge for you? What's the hardest thing you're facing as a leader now, and how are you tackling it?
That's a great question. It's hard, I think, now to work in the conservation, climate, and stewardship space without feeling like our sector is sort of under siege. We've been on a 5 or 10 year growth cycle in this space, and when you're in a growth cycle, there's all sorts of opportunity. You feel like you can make more progress, more impact, and really push to get further gains. But now with the US federal administration pulling out of the Paris Agreement, with funding cuts, and with so many other things, it is a different mindset that we have to have. It is not a mindset of opportunity, but a mindset of we've got to dig in and we've got to protect our gains, and we have got to be in a mindset of fierce resolve around this. In other words, everyone in our sector doesn't do it because it's easy, they do it because we're committed. Well, this tests your commitment. And you have got to refine your center, refine your resolve, and be fierce about it. And that's a source of motivation, and it's a different source of motivation than one that you carry in times of opportunity and growth. And that's something that I have been trying to carry into my discussions, trying to find for myself, but also carry it in with colleagues, with team members that I work closely with, because I think we're in for a tougher time over the next 4 years than we've had over the last 5 or 10.
Well, it's interesting because it's basically a battle on two fronts, right? You have the climate itself, the changes that are happening, the environmental piece, and then you have the political piece.
Yeah.
And you're really dealing with two very, very large issues, right? In those two, and how they come together. And so how do you restore yourself or keep yourself grounded and motivated in that fight, knowing that the challenges coming from both sides are monumental?
Yeah, they are. And the climate science is clear. I mean, we know that we're already committed to a certain level of warming. We are seeing that across the board, including right here in Hawaii. The political climate, I think if you are the sort of person that gets demoralized by the political narrative changing in ways that don't accrue to your values, then you just have to find a different source of resilience, because quite frankly, that's always going to be a battle, to try to shift the politics towards the value sets and solutions that will favor a more climate resilient future. I mean, that's part of what we have to do, but that's just one part of the overall climate environmental agenda and sector. So there's all sorts of roles that we all have to play, and politics is just one of them.
We always end the same, that is to ask, what's the best piece of advice that you ever received?
There's this famous letter from my grandfather to my mom and her sisters, and I'm named after him, but I never knew him because he passed away when I was 1 year old. And he wrote this letter to my sisters, and he signed it with, "Don't let the bastards get you down." And that's become sort of an unofficial family mantra for maintaining resilience in the face of whatever obstacle or burden you may carry. But it's also a little lighthearted too, which is fitting for, the family I grew up in.
For Jack, resilience is at the heart of it all, in conservation, in leadership, and in life. Don't let the bastards get you down. For A Leader's Journey, I'm Yunji Denise.